Hi readers, welcome back to Reading Realm. Today I'm doing a different book, not a murder mystery this time actually. So this is actually one that I read over a year ago, and I actually did record a review for it back then, but the recording was lost to the ether, unfortunately, and so now I'm re-recording it. I finally got the book because it is one that I highlighted and gave to my parents because it is another autism book. Today we are reviewing Connecting with the Autism Spectrum by Casey Vormer. The subtitle is How to Talk, How to Listen, and Why You Shouldn't Call It High Functioning. And as a high-functioning autistic person, I agree with that sentiment. Don't call it high functioning. I prefer the term high masking if any term like that must be used. But I have highlighted, I have annotated things that I specifically connect to, and I feel like I should have said this during any of my other autism book reviews, not reviews of autism, whatever. I feel like if you are a person who is autistic, I feel like there is so much stigma, and each person is so individually different that I highly recommend, if there's a person in your life that you wish could kind of understand or relate to you more, but it's hard to put into words, this is a really effective way to do it. And it can also be a way to provide them with someone else's words, but then invite the conversation for them to talk to you about what your experience has been, why you felt the way that you did about what happened in the experience that you talked about. And like, as you can see, some of these I didn't highlight at all, and then other parts I highlight almost everything. And so I do think this is a really good book because it goes through so many different aspects. And so just talking about major categories, like Chapter 1 is Understanding the Autism Spectrum, Chapter 2 is Neurodiversity, Ableism, and Society, Chapter 3 is Communication Breakdown, Chapter 4 is Autism at School. That's a huge one for me. I struggled so much in grade school. No one could ever tell me why. No one ever thought, oh, you're autistic, that's why you're having all these problems. No one ever told me those were problems I could even have. No one told me anything about autism. So the school one was really good. And then it says autism at work and autism in social relationships. And then it also has resources and references. And I think that that's so important because it covers such a range. Like, it goes from school, which is more kids or teenagers, up to, like, work, professional adults. Because a lot of autistic research and information and diagnosis frameworks and assistance programs are only for, or more geared towards children. And so having actual stuff about, here's things that are a problem in a workplace environment, that's so good to have and so good to kind of raise awareness for, because the unemployment rate in autistic people is very high. And a lot of that, it comes from stigma about autism or workplaces not being willing to accommodate an autistic person's needs, even if it's a relatively reasonable request. And so I think that it's so important that this book talks about that and raises awareness for that. And also this book is interesting because it is written for non-autistic people, because it has like tips for teachers where it's like, if you have an autistic student, here's what you should do. It has all these things about, like, here's how you can make the autistic person feel comfortable. Here's how you can support them, rather than things that are more focused on, like, hey, autistic person, here's what you might struggle with. And I think that that is very helpful too, and learning about autism from books about autism for autistic people has also been very helpful for me. But when trying to educate a person who is not autistic in things, this book especially is very, very, very helpful, because I think it is very good about talking about different options, and takes into account and acknowledges regularly, look, all autistic people are different. This may work for the person in your life, this may not. Here's what they might struggle with. They might not. They might be totally fine with that. Here's other things they could struggle with. It's really, really good. It also has a part, it has information about, like, how is it diagnosed in children versus how is it diagnosed in adults. And it talks about how autism can often look different in female people than in male people. And the same is true for ADHD. Not that the same way it's different is the same, but ADHD does present differently in male people versus female people, and that's why so many female people go undiagnosed, because the ADHD assessment is based on male ADHD. And this also addresses that statistically, only 1 in 4 autistic people are female, which implies that there's a higher rate of autism in male people. But this book acknowledges, and I think it's important too, that there's a really high chance that that's not true, that it is actually equally likely or close to equally likely. It's just that so many female people have not been diagnosed, because the way they're diagnosed isn't accurate to their sort of symptoms presentation of ADHD. And a lot of times female people with autism can get diagnosed with anxiety, OCD, or eating disorders instead of autism, or as a separate thing, but they're missing that they're also autistic. Because I feel like I was misdiagnosed with depression in middle school. I don't think I ever had depression. I think I had autistic burnout, to a really severe extent, which is similar, but the cause and the way to fix it were different. Antidepressants never did anything for me, which kind of also makes me think that it wasn't that. I think it was burnout. But I think that that's such an important thing to acknowledge, that there is a really wide margin of error in diagnosis for female people. This book is obviously about autism, but it's true for ADHD as well, which I also have. And no one suspected that I had this when I was younger. Like, there were male students in grade school with me who were autistic or had ADHD officially diagnosed when they were like 7, 8, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was 14. And when I was, no one told me or my parents anything about what that meant, and no teachers seemed to know how to deal with me either. So it was just kind of like a whole mess. Which caused so many problems for me in school. It was not the most fun thing. But we're not here to get into my school trauma today. We're here to talk about this book. And this book does actually talk about school trauma and how a lot of autistic people have it, and how a lot of times it is because they had people who just didn't know how to accommodate them. They give 9 different tips for teachers to be able to do. Some of these did not apply to me. I highlighted the ones that did. So I also tried to highlight things for my parents that apply to me today. Some of these would have applied to me if I was still in grade school. So one I highlighted is don't force eye contact. I hated, luckily my parents never did this, and I know some parents do, but whenever teachers would be like, look at me in the eyes, I would be like, oh my gosh. Like, I would cower internally and be so uncomfortable, and it would be impossible for me to do anything, like, without feeling unsafe. After that, there was also, allow autistic people to have some sort of noise cancellation or sort of, like, isolated space when doing tests so that sounds aren't distracting, because tests are super quiet a lot of the time, and you hear, like, all the scratching pencils, all the everything around. One important one, don't assume a child doesn't understand something they might understand perfectly but are unable to explain it using their own words. I love that one. I highlighted that part. Also, for autistic people, school can take a tremendous amount of energy. That one is also important because I feel like school is so much more draining for an autistic person than a different person who is not autistic. I'm a double major in university right now, and I just had finals week, and it was rough. Like, the last couple weeks of school, I've just been like, I want a break. I want to be done with this. I need to just get through this, and it's starting to be spring break now, so this will probably actually be the video the weekend after, at the end of spring break for me. But, I'm going home to see my family, so I recorded 2 videos today to have on the Saturday. That's the day after, well, it's technically Friday now because it's after midnight. Technically tomorrow, and then one a week from then. But, overall, like, this book, I think, is a really, really good book because it is written by an autistic person, but it's written by an autistic person who also is trying to have a lot of awareness for what a non-autistic person needs to be able to understand. And they do it in a way that's non-accusatory, which I think is really good because I feel like it's easy for a person who's frustrated with people in society not, like, being accommodating or not understanding to kind of be like, it's your fault for not making the world more accessible. Like, I've seen certain, it hasn't been, like, a full book, but I've seen certain articles or posts where it is more like that. And I think that it's important to keep it in the framework of, we have a hard time understanding the world that you have created and live in. We need some extra help to understand that, and you need to be patient with us and give us that. You need to make a safer place for us, but we understand that you can't fix everything, and we also understand that it's not all because of you that we're having a hard time. There are definitely people who make it worse. I've had certain really abusive teachers who I wish I had known some of the stuff they did was illegal back then because I want them fired. But I'm not going to talk about that right now. I'm going to focus on the book because that's what I'm here to do. But yes, I think it's good because of the approach of having some scientific background of what is autism, how is it diagnosed, sort of the history of it, the whole thing about is it different in male and female people, all of that I think is really good, but then it goes into more of the real world, here's what's experienced. I love the part where they talk about why you shouldn't call it high functioning, because that's something that I dealt with a lot, and I feel like the best way that I can put it into perspective for my own experience was when people found out that I was autistic, they would kind of care more. They would try to, like, help me with things and offer me assistance or accommodations. But if someone said that I was high-functioning autistic, it became, oh, so you have autism, but you function highly, so you should be able to function at the level of a normal, holistic person, which is not the case. Even though I can kind of blend in a lot of times I'm not really visibly, obviously autistic, I cannot do a lot of things at the same level as an holistic person. I also cannot consistently do the same things every day. Sometimes I can't get out of bed. Some days I can do the dishes and the laundry and record videos and edit videos and upload videos and do all my homework and go to all my classes, cook my own food. There's, like, a lot of stuff. It varies day to day. It varies from autistic person to autistic person, and then within that, every day, it varies. There was another book, I think it's in Sincerely Your Autistic Child, which I'm going to be reviewing eventually, where a person, and this is paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but had a really, really good quote about essentially, you don't know how terrifying it is to every day wake up not knowing what you'll be capable of that day, because some days you wake up and you just can't do anything, and then other days you can be so productive and get tons of stuff done and be really responsible, and it's kind of a dice roll every day for a lot of autistic people, and when people get frustrated at the autistic person, it's like no one is more frustrated or distressed by this than the autistic person. So dealing with it like that, where the other person is blaming or being accusatory, that's not helpful, and that's honestly making everything worse. But that's not in this book. So I just thought that was a really, really good way of putting it, that high functioning is used often to kind of excuse treating them the same and dismiss the need for accommodations, dismiss the need for things that will make them more comfortable or feeling safer, dismiss the need for having access to help they might need. I was too high functioning to ever be in any kind of special needs program in school, which I feel like was, if I had been in a full-on special needs program, I would probably have been very bored. I would probably have been completely losing my mind because it would have been too easy but I definitely did need more accommodations than what I was given when I was being treated like everyone else. And I think that there should be some kind of program in schools that's like between special needs and normal classes, because a lot of autistic people, and myself included, are very intelligent, but just can't do all of the classwork and focus in a really sensory overwhelming environment, maybe can't come to class every day when they get too overwhelmed, and there's just stuff that makes it more difficult even if they are high masking. And high masking is the preferred term for a lot of autistic people because it means that the autistic person is able to camouflage and pass as normal, not obviously very severely autistic, but it is them typically hiding how they actually are. It could be suppressing stims, it could be forcing themselves to do eye contact even if they're super uncomfortable, it could be forcing themselves to try and put on a persona. All of that can be really damaging. Masking can be extremely exhausting, it can be extremely taxing, and it can just increase issues of burnout and all that kind of stuff. So high functioning implies like, oh yeah, you're autistic, but you're doing great, you can do stuff, you're perfect. High masking implies that I could pass as completely normal, I could pass as not having sensory problems, I could pass as being able to do eye contact sometimes, I could pass for all these things, I can have a conversation, I'm not nonverbal, I can do some stuff to take care of myself, I live on my own, but it also comes with the connotation that sometimes when I'm doing that, I'm having to conceal a part of myself or hide a behavior that might make me more comfortable but isn't as socially acceptable, like certain stims in public are more disruptive or annoying. I think my most common stim isn't something that ever affects people very much. I mess with my hair a lot, and I think it's partly an ADHD fidget thing, but also a little bit of stim as well. When my hair used to be 21 inches longer than it is now, I would do it a lot more, but I feel like masking is damaging. If you're interested in this topic, there's a ton of resources about how it can negatively impact a person's own identity. It can be really emotionally draining. It can be emotionally damaging if you are constantly feeling like the only way people will like you or be accepted is if you're someone that you're not, and present that instead. But this kind of got off topic from the book itself, but I think that those were all important parts of the book that that I do think it's good to expand on and give an alternative for high functioning for anyone who does know a person who's autistic but is able to pass as doing okay. But yes, I highly recommend this book for anyone who is autistic, either for their own purposes or to use to encourage people around you to understand better what you're experiencing, what you're going through. I do recommend doing something like what I did if you want to highlight and annotate, because I feel like that is a good way to communicate, because putting stuff into words is not always the easiest for autistic people, so if you have someone else's words to be like, good point, or there's something about, think about the last time you had a really bad headache or a bout of insomnia, and you'll have some idea how a seemingly calm environment like a quiet room can overwhelm your senses. And I put a little arrow and underline to the overwhelm your senses part after I had highlighted the whole thing too. And I said, keep in mind it's a daily occurrence, not just that you had a headache months ago. It's always your sensory perception is kind of being assaulted. Like right now, that light is normally fine. It's my grow light, but on my computer, it's washing out more in the video, and it's very bright, so I'm having to like avoid looking at that part of my screen right now. There we go. But yeah, I think it's really helpful to be able to use this as a way to communicate, or if you want to learn more about an autistic person in your life without an autistic person giving you the book, I recommend that. Or if you just want to know how to better support autistic people and the autism community, even if you don't know a single person, I think it's always good to try to increase awareness and education of facts about stuff like this and kind of try to decrease the harmful stigma around it, because there is so much of that too. But I think that basically sums up that book. I didn't go too much into all the different sections just because that would be like a 3-hour video, because I could talk about a lot of it. But I do think that it's important to touch on the fact that it does address a lot of different things. It addresses more of the scientific diagnosis, what it is, kind of neurology part, and then it also talks about like school is challenging, here's what can happen, here's what people experience, teachers, maybe try this, parents, here's how you can support. And then also in the workplace, like if you hire an autistic person, here's some stuff you should know. Here's like we need to normalize workplaces allowing reasonable accommodations, stuff like that. But let me know if you've read this book or if you plan to. Let me know what you're reading. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and keep reading. Bye!